He said, quote, "I just don't like the talk around the USA versus European style of how you approach the game," Durant told ESPN.
Kobe, you've been pretty critical of the AAU system and the way American players are brought up.
Not pretty critical, I'm extremely critical.
It is the worst part of basketball I've ever seen in my entire life. It's disgusting.
All I hear is AAU is destroying the game. The Euros do it right, while the Americans do it wrong. It's a lot of bullshit with that.
You know what I mean? Because like my generation is when the AAU basketball really started becoming shit. You know, and I got lucky because I grew up in Europe.
Right.
And, you know, everything there was still fundamental. So I learned all the basics. And I think we're doing a tremendous disservice to our young basketball players right now. And that's something that definitely needs to be fixed.
I can read between the lines on that. It's a shot at black Americans.
Our basketball development in the United States needs to be better. The AU basketball is probably the worst brand of basketball.
When examining basketball during the 1980s, a common slogan for the NBA was that this sport belongs to America. During the 80s, that was absolutely accurate. But observe the 90s. That's when basketball transformed into a worldwide phenomenon eventually controlled by foreign athletes. Naturally, you witnessed the Dream Team 92-94, the inaugural international MVP. The transformation occurred in the NBA during the 1990s. But even examine the 2000s overseas athletes. European talents were essentially everywhere. In 2026, half your roster consists of international athletes, and observe the NBA collectively 30% of the league comprises foreign-born talent.
The number of international players in the NBA. Back in 1992, there were only 23. At the start of last season, that number had swelled by almost 5 times to 113.
Even though the international game has grown, what you've seen, do you think the world will ever catch up to the USA?
Hell, of course not.
I disagree.
They're as good as any player around the world. The only thing that they're lacking that we still dominate is athleticism. But from a basketball standpoint and from an IQ, knowing about winning, team chemistry, these players come over more developed and more ready to play.
Currently be approximately 1/3 of athlete and international. And observe the elite performers. You could construct a compelling argument the top 5 individuals are entirely non-Americans. That being Nikola Jokic, SGA, Wembanyama, Giannis, and Luka Doncic. That precisely in 2026 represents the 5 greatest performers consensus, wise among supporters. So you must pose the inquiry, how do we transition from America's sport to being controlled by international athletes? The response to that inquiry is more straightforward than anyone might assume.
The infestation of what we have really starts in AAU. And then from there, it becomes a disease that spreads everywhere.
You can lose every game during that tournament, and you're guaranteed to play 6 games. And that's how they get you in there. And so to me, the emphasis is not on winning. It's on showcasing your own individual talent.
I mean, just looking at the AAU, kind of how formatted it is, like we're not playing 6 games a week. Like we're playing
like AAU format, huh?
two games, and then we're practicing. Like we're learning.
If you're similar to Kevin Durant, you bury your head in the sand, believe AAU basketball is acceptable. In my perspective, you're living in denial. Examining international athletes, the distance undeniably has been narrowed. If you're being truthful, you must pose the inquiry, how has the distance been narrowed? The singular response staring directly at us is AAU basketball. It's terrible as examining AAU. What does it prioritize beyond everything else? The solo performer highlights securing scholarships and essentially establishing a reputation. International athletes, European basketball. What it prioritizes beyond everything else is the squad and the cultivation of athletes. And let's establish one matter extremely clear. Absolutely. Exceptional American performers have entirely participated in AAU. However, with that mentioned, that doesn't signify AAU enhanced them as performers to cultivate their abilities. And examining someone like Austin Rivers, naturally. Father Doc Rivers, during his AAU participation, he was competing 3-4 contests in a solitary day and getting completely exhausted. Doc Rivers' son was a monster in AAU, but regardless of that, he detested the structure because it was awful.
You suck!
And if you competed in AAU, you understand how this operates. In any particular weekend, 2 to 3 days, you're competing 4 contests daily. In an entire weekend, approximately 10 contests total. That for the young competitor is complete torture. In the long term, it can entirely destroy your career and derail your prospects. Examining Europe, it's the precise opposite. Out of the 7-day week, 6 days you're training twice daily every day. Contest day, there's a single contest weekly on the weekend. That contrasted with AAU is the absolute inverse.
You're in Europe. If you go play in Europe, you practice twice a day, every single day, except for game days. Twice a day.
And you only play one time a week.
Were those programs overseas? Some of those kids are practicing twice a day. I mean, it's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week player development, concept development program.
Now, regarding AU in America, undoubtedly it can rescue certain individuals from some extremely harsh futures and provide guys opportunities they otherwise wouldn't possess. AU in that aspect is acceptable, but examining the broader perspective, I mean, the complete structure at minimum requires adjustment at the absolute most extreme needs to be eliminated entirely. And again, examining KD's remarks, attempting to transform this into a racial matter, black versus white, black versus European, I believe it's entirely misguided and a significant stretch. Why individuals are critical of AAU is contrasted with the international circuit is not merely different, but considerably worse for the individual athlete and the competitor. If you're a guy 15, 16 years old competing 8-10 contests on a weekend, that for your physique is absolutely going to destroy you eventually.
But those youth programs were basically our prep schools on steroids.
They say, you know, those guys practice possibly twice a day. I'm not sure about the younger, but the older teams practice twice a day. Younger kids will practice the entire week to play one game. We will practice one time to play a weekend or sometimes 4, 5. I've seen 6 games before.
In that aspect, AAU is completely harmful. And for the athlete's cultivation, what's more advantageous? 10 contests in a week, singular practice, or 6 practices, singular contest. Any competitor, regardless of discipline, ethnicity, will inform you obviously training more is more significant and superior than one isolated contest or 10 contests at that. Why the international American distance has narrowed significantly, in my perspective, is with the AU structure and its evident deficiencies. Highlighting those deficiencies doesn't render you anti-American or despise black individuals. What it renders you as someone who sees a broader perspective and the deficiencies in the existing structure for Kevin Durant AAU circuit, I believe it's somewhat personal as examining his path, how he emerged was on that circuit to him AAU, is how he escaped, and I comprehend that. But again, examining the structure, it's entirely defective.
There's a lot to complain about in junior basketball. And it's a lot of it, I would say too much of it is about money. Parents and players were essentially consumers. So they were looking for the best situation for themselves in order to move forward in the game to the best they wanted.
Yeah. So it doesn't set them up for success
At all.
to handle any kind of adversity.
So pausing that right there very briefly. Regarding the top 1% of prospects, your generational talents like a Kevin Durant, LeBron James, a Dwight Howard, they're going to reach the NBA regardless of competing in AAU or even competing in college. They're that exceptional, that gifted, and they're that extraordinary. We're examining beneath those individuals to the mid-level competitor, ordinary competitor, even above ordinary competitor. AAU can be an absolute destroyer as what they prioritize is highlights, physical prowess, and essentially performing for the spectators. What they don't genuinely prioritize is cultivation and improving as a competitor. For the ordinary AAU competitor, when you cultivate is on your personal time. Over in Europe, when you cultivate is with your squad and with your trainers at solo abilities as well as squad abilities.
We don't have no college, we have no high school. It'd be like if the Thunder had like a U15 team, but then if you're good enough, you can also still go practice with the Thunder team. So like I think that's something unique where, especially for me, it helped me mature a lot earlier.
That precisely, in my perspective, the international athletes have caught up and even exceeded some individuals who had exceptional American competitors. Now, examining Team USA collectively, absolutely, contrasted with Serbia, France, they're going to defeat those nations because contrasted with America, the population is minuscule at best. What you must observe examining those nations, how do they possess so many NBA competitors despite the tiny population? What that returns to is cultivation and comprehensive culture in those nations. So that precisely is in the video. And I'll mention one final matter. What the complete discussion reduces to is training versus contests. Over in Europe, what they prioritize more than anything is training. The AAU circuit, what they don't prioritize is training. And what they do prioritize is numerous contests and enormous exposure. That in essence is AAU exposure, establishing a reputation and securing scholarships. As always, appreciation guys for watching. Hope you appreciated it. I'll see you next time.